tout le monde. Thank you, Richie. I can't wait to see you in Ottawa as our next MP from Mississauga-Streetsville. And speaking of leaders, it's great to be here with Mayor Bonnie Crombie, who I actually got elected with in my very first election. You were MP for Mississauga-Streetsville as I was the new rookie MP for Papineau. And we sat together, learned a lot, and really developed a deep commitment for service to the people of Canada that we've both continued in different ways. But it is so good to have you here with me today, old friend. Just this week, you made, Bonnie, the decision that all Mississauga City employees will have to be vaccinated. Well, that's the kind of local leadership that will see us through this crisis. So thank you again and again for stepping up, Bonnie. And that's the kind of leadership that people like Omar and Adnan, who've welcomed us here today, deserve. They're the owners of this restaurant. They were telling me, well, things are getting better. We're not out of the woods yet. They struggled like so many small businesses did through this pandemic, but we've made it through because Canadians were there for each other, because the government was there for them. And of course, Omar and Adnan aren't the only ones to know that we still have to work hard to get through this. In a few days, school will be back here in Ontario. And I'm a dad. My youngest, Hadrian, is heading into grade 2 in an Ottawa public school. He can't get his shots yet. And like millions of parents, I'm worried. But there's a lot we can do to protect kids, just like our workers. And the single most powerful way to keep each other safe? Getting vaccinated. Dès le début de cette crise, on savait que les vaccins allaient être notre meilleure arme contre la COVID-19. C'est pourquoi on s'est assuré d'avoir assez de doses pour tous les Canadiens qui en voulaient. On a mis de l'avant de la vaccination obligatoire pour tous les employés fédéraux. On va s'assurer que tous les gens qui prennent un train ou un avion sont vaccinés. Et on poursuit notre travail. Aujourd'hui, je veux présenter notre plan pour en finir avec la COVID-19 une bonne fois pour toutes. Le Québec et la Colombie-Britannique ont déjà annoncé leur certificat vaccinal qui vont permettre aux personnes adéquatement protégées d'accéder à certains lieux publics. On sait que ces mesures vont faire une vraie différence pour empêcher la propagation du virus et pour nous protéger, et elles vont encourager ceux qui hésitent d'enfin faire la bonne chose. Ces certifications vont aussi être bonnes pour l'économie parce qu'elles vont permettre aux entreprises de rester ouvertes et aux gens de continuer de travailler. On est là pour appuyer ces efforts des provinces. We will create a $1 billion COVID-19 proof of vaccination fund. So if your premier, wherever you are across the country, if your premier mandates that everyone in your local restaurant or gym or other non-essential locations must be fully vaccinated and show proof, we'll pay for the development and rollout of that program. A vaccine mandate for non-essential businesses is a good idea. It keeps people safe. It encourages everyone to do the right thing. It keeps our businesses open, and it keeps our economy rebuilding. In fact, a top bank economist has warned that provinces that don't bring in these vaccine mandates will have slower job creation and a weaker recovery than those that do. And that's not good news for jobs, for businesses, or for anyone. This is about doing the right thing and the smart thing. Already, Premier Horgan and Premier Legault have stepped up. And I certainly hope that here in Ontario, Premier Ford steps up as well. It's time for him to listen to public health officials and leaders like Bonnie Crombie. And we'll be ready when he does. Because keeping you safe, that's my top priority. And not just through this fall, but over the long term too. Chaque Canadien va pouvoir avoir une dose de rappel quand les experts vont leur commander. Et tout comme le vaccin que vous avez reçu cette année, la dose de rappel va être payée par le gouvernement fédéral. On va aussi investir pour faire encore plus de recherches sur la COVID-19 afin de mieux comprendre les effets du virus à long terme. particulièrement sur les enfants, pour s'assurer qu'on fait tout ce qu'on peut pour leur santé. We've come so far in this fight against COVID-19. Together, we have to keep going. So get your vaccine if you haven't already. If you're a student over 12 or a parent getting ready for September, put it on your back to school list. If you're a young adult or senior, put those 2 shots on your to-do list. We can't afford to stop now, and we certainly can't afford a party that would roll back our progress. And that's why this election matters so much. Because from vaccines to $10 a day childcare, none of this happens if Erin O'Toole is sitting across the table from Doug Ford or any other premier. Leadership is about choices. And our choices? We chose to raise taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for the middle class. We chose to fight for $10 a day childcare right across the country. Nous, on a fait le choix de travailler ensemble parce qu'on croit que bâtir un meilleur avenir pour une mère qui travaille et pour ses enfants mène à un meilleur avenir pour nous tous. Et c'est exactement ce qu'on va continuer de faire pour l'environnement et les emplois verts, pour du logement abordable et des soins de santé de qualité, pour la vaccination et pour en finir avec la COVID-19. These are our choices. They're not everyone's. Erin O'Toole would rip up our $10 a day childcare agreements. He would slow down climate action for the economy because he doesn't understand that they go hand in hand. He would choose landlords over renters. He'd choose more options in healthcare for the wealthy and fewer for everyone else. The one thing he won't choose? Vaccines. He can't even tell his own candidates to get their shots. He can't tell Canadians why he doesn't think everyone boarding a plane or a train should be vaccinated. Those are his choices, and they're the wrong choices at exactly the wrong time. That's what's at stake in this election. And the path Canada takes, well, that's up to you. That's your choice. I want to take a moment right now to talk about those folks outside, as there have been at a number of stops along this campaign, who are protesting masks, who are protesting vaccines, who are angry about public health measures like lockdowns. That's their choice. That's a choice that they are expressing loudly and clearly. But it's not just a choice that they're making for themselves. It's a choice they're imposing on others. Because we only get through this pandemic, we only finish with this pandemic if everyone steps up, not just for themselves, but for each other. My son's 7 years old. He can't get vaccinated. Thousands upon thousands of kids across the country depend on adults doing their part and getting vaccinated, on making the smart choices to keep each other safe. So it's not just about you. It's about everyone you love. It's about our doctors and emergency workers who are getting more and more overwhelmed with people who haven't gotten their vaccines. It's about being there for each other. And it's about finishing the incredibly hard work that we've done as Canadians over the past year and a half. People stepped up. Omar and Adnan were telling me how difficult it was over the past 17 months, how much they relied on government supports to get through this, but also how much they relied on their neighbors, their customers to keep doing the right things so we could get to this point. And things are starting to pick up again. Things are getting back to normal. Well, those folks outside and the politicians who agree with them are endangering that. And that's the choice people here in the GTA and right across the country get to make about how we finish this fight against the pandemic, how we continue to be there for each other. The Conservative leader won't even tell his candidates to get vaccinated. How does he think we're going to actually get through this pandemic under his leadership? We wouldn't. For the past year and a half, we've been through a lot, but we went through it together. Every day, I'd come out of my house, stand in front of my door, and talk to you about PPE or the wage subsidy or the borders or kids or how we needed to keep safe. And every day, I think about the healthcare workers using this PPE. I think about the small businesses keeping people on the job. I think about the truckers and grocery workers keeping our plates full. I think about the kids worried about their parents, worried about their grandparents, missing their friends, but hanging in there. We knew we had to have their backs. So that's what we did. And that's what you did too. Canada has weathered this crisis better than almost anywhere else in the world. We did that together. You did that. And just think about what we can do next together. We can move faster and go further than we could ever have imagined before. Those are the decisions we're going to be making right now, not a year from now, not 2 years from now, but right now. And that's why I need your support. So we can do more, much more, for everyone. My friends, I'm asking you to step up once again for good jobs now and in the years to come, for affordable homes for your future and childcare for your daughters, for the air you breathe today and the planet your grandchildren will inherit tomorrow, for the Canada we want to build together. This is our moment. This is our choice. And if you're with me, I'm ready for more hard work. I'm ready for hope. I'm ready for everything we can achieve with faith in each other, with a belief in what this country can be. Let's choose forward for everyone. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. We'll now start the 20-minute question period with Christy Kirka from the Globe and Mail.
Good morning. Just on another topic on Afghanistan again. Your government has been advising Canadians and Afghan refugees to find a safe place to hide from the Taliban as they try to escape. Meantime, Canadian veterans who have been trying to help and had been pushing for expedited visas are now telling people to hide again and come up with rescue plans. So why isn't your government being proactive about helping those left behind in Afghanistan get to other countries like Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and Pakistan?
We are absolutely actively working with regional partners to counter the extraordinarily difficult situation that so many Afghan nationals are going through right now. We see the news every night as Canadians and feel such deep sorrow and heartbreak and concern for those folks who've been there alongside Canadians fighting for a better future in Afghanistan for so many years. We need to continue to do more. And even as this temporary air bridge ends with the withdrawal of American and allied troops, we continue to work with regional partners. We continue to do everything we can and will continue to do everything we can to make sure that people who have processes with Canada, who have documentation for Canada, who've been engaging with Canada these past months, are able to come to Canada. We will continue to work day in and day out to get them to safety. Okay. Je sais que les gens sont en train de regarder avec énormément d'émotion et de préoccupation les nouvelles à tous les soirs sur l'Afghanistan. Les attentats terroristes sont déplorables et nous les condamnons de tout cœur. Et nous allons continuer d'être là pour aider l'évacuation du plus grand nombre de gens possible. Oui, l'étape de vol d'urgence est en train de se terminer maintenant parce que les troupes américaines et alliés sont en train de se retirer. Mais nous allons continuer de travailler avec les partenaires régionaux, avec nos alliés, pour aider le plus de gens possible, certainement ceux qui ont la documentation et l'engagement avec le gouvernement canadien, de trouver des façons de sortir de l'Afghanistan et de venir au Canada.
Following up.
And Prime Minister, just on these Afghanistan evacuations, if you were to have a do-over moment, to do something differently, what would you do?
I think Allied forces, Canadians, Americans, and others, I think politicians and leaders around the world, I think Afghans themselves were surprised at just how fast the Taliban were able to take over in Afghanistan. Over the past number of months, we have been working to get as many people out as possible, but I think a lot of people on the ground and around the world thought there would be more time. We accelerated our processes over the past number of weeks and months. We did everything we could, but of course it got even more intense, more quickly than everyone expected. And I think it is important to thank the Canadian Armed Forces members, the diplomats, the consular officials who've been working so unbelievably hard, as they have many times in the past, whether it was getting Canadians home to Canada in the beginning of this pandemic, or rapidly bringing over tens of thousands of Syrian refugees in 2015 and 2016. Canadians continue to step up, especially right across the country, to welcome people fleeing violence and terror into our country, into their new country, into their new homes.
Next question.
Abigail Beeman, Global News. You talk about working with regional partners. I'm wondering, in order to help bring Afghans to Canada who went to those neighboring states, are you planning to restaff embassies that went to skeleton staffing during COVID? And what kind of other supports would you be sending there, military or otherwise?
We know now with the end of this temporary air bridge, it is going to be more and more important to be working closely with regional partners on getting people to safety. We are working with various countries around the globe, specifically around the region, to ensure that people bearing Canadian documentation or who are working with IRCC on their immigration status to Canada be expedited, be welcomed, be treated extremely well so we can get them to Canada. In a situation like this, so many countries in the region are worried about the refugee crisis, worried about long-term camps being set up and the border countries around Afghanistan and other parts of the region. Canada, by being so generous, by Canadians, by being so solid about welcoming Afghans to Canada in the tens of thousands in the coming months, can tell those countries, look, anyone who has Canadian documentation, expedite them, we'll take them, we'll process them quickly. And that will help at getting people who Canada owes a duty of care to out to safety and here to Canada.
Last night, Aaron O'Toole said if he were Prime Minister, he would, quote, provide political and material support to Afghans resisting the Taliban occupation. Is that something that you would be prepared to do? And what kind of material support do you think is appropriate?
We're going to continue to work with the international community on ensuring a stronger future for Afghanistan, on demonstrating and putting pressure on the Taliban to allow people to leave, to respect human rights, to do more to protect vulnerable Afghans, particularly women and girls who've seen significant progress over the past number of years. At the same time, Aaron O'Toole is promising to end the immigration program responsible for bringing over tens of thousands of Syrian refugees, and the very program we're using to welcome in the future tens of thousands of Afghan refugees. So Aaron O'Toole is talking about doing more to help in Afghanistan, but not to being generous the way Canada has always been with government-sponsored refugees. I think people can read through the lines and understand what his perspective is on that for real. Okay. Évidemment, nous devons de continuer de travailler avec nos partenaires pour mettre de la pression sur les talibans, de permettre les gens de quitter l'Afghanistan qui veulent, d'assurer la protection des femmes et des filles et des opportunités de créer de la croissance inclusive en Afghanistan. Nous allons continuer d'être là, nous allons continuer de faire ce travail. En même temps, même si M. O'Toole parle de continuer d'aider en Afghanistan, il parle aussi d'en finir avec le programme qui a permis au Canada d'accepter des dizaines de milliers de réfugiés syriens il y a plusieurs années et d'en finir avec le programme qu'on va utiliser pour accueillir des dizaines de milliers d'Afghans ici au Canada. Je pense qu'encore une fois, on voit que la perspective des conservateurs n'est pas alignée avec la générosité des Canadiens par rapport à notre responsabilité d'aider les autres en situation de détresse.
Merci. Prochaine question.
Glenn McGregor, CTV News. Mr. Trudeau, could you expand a little bit on what you meant when you said you could read through the lines about what Mr. O'Toole really believes? And to my question, we're hearing reports about Canadian citizens in Afghanistan who feel particularly abandoned by your government. Will you prioritize their airlift or getting them out of Afghanistan now that resources are becoming scarce and it's becoming so much harder now over refugee application?
I think a lot of Canadians can't help but reflect on this situation in this election when we are pledging to welcome tens of thousands of Afghan refugees fleeing terrible violence to what we lived through in 2015 when the Conservative government of the time was not stepping up to welcome Syrian refugees. And we find ourselves today in a Syrian restaurant when we as a government pushed back on the Conservatives because we knew that Canadians wanted to do more, wanted to welcome people fleeing hardship and violence and civil war. And over the past 6 years, those Syrian Canadians have been extraordinary in contributing to their communities and contributing to this country and showing the world as well what real leadership and real generosity looks like. And now Erin O'Toole is promising to end the very program that brought in tens of thousands of Syrian refugees, the very program we're using to bring in tens of thousands of Afghans fleeing to Canada. That doesn't make sense. And our priority has been from the very beginning and will always be getting Canadians to safety. Yes, there are thousands of Afghans to whom we owe a duty of care, and we are doing tremendous things to get them to safety as well. But our first priority has to be and will always be getting Canadians to safety. That was what we did in the 17 flights over the past few weeks that we got out. We compare favorably and strongly to just about every other of our allied countries in terms of how strongly and actively Canadians work to get people out of Afghanistan to safety. And for the Canadians who remain, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, we will continue both to demand that the Taliban allow them to get out to safety, but also to work with international allies and regional partners to ensure that they're able to do that.
Following up.
When you were in Belgium in June, you saw firsthand how the European Union had implemented a multinational vaccine passport. It was already up and running even then. People were using it to get into restaurants and bars. Today, you're saying sometime after the election, you will write a check to each province and say, take it away from there. You haven't implemented a national vaccine passport. You could have done this months ago. Why are you not showing more leadership on this?
I think from the beginning of this pandemic, Canadians have watched the federal government and provincial governments work together to keep people safe. One of the things we were lucky about, certainly in the beginning of this pandemic compared to certain other countries, is that the pandemic didn't become a polarizing political issue. Premiers of all different stripes gathered together every week at first, every couple of weeks after that for the duration of this pandemic, to coordinate what we were doing, to work together, to make sure we were all on the same page, to recognize that different parts of the country were facing different challenges and therefore needed different responses. But every step of the way, we worked together. Now, the federal government doesn't have the vaccination status of all Canadians. That's a provincial healthcare responsibility. So we have to work with the provinces to do that. And we've seen a number of provinces step up on the leadership that is going to both keep people safe, reassure business owners, and encourage everyone to get that final step and get vaccinated. When BC, when Quebec announced vaccination certification mandates, we saw strong increases in the number of people finally going to get their shots. That's what we want to see right across the country. That's how we're going to get through it. And I want to remove the barrier that is, it might be really expensive to do from provinces' calculations. We will take on the financial costs of bringing in vaccination mandates for non-essential business services and businesses so that we can make sure that everyone is doing their part to keep us all safe and to get through this pandemic quicker and stronger than otherwise we would.
Next question.
Bonjour, Monsieur Trudeau, Catherine Lévesque, la presse canadienne. Je voulais revenir sur la vaccination, mais de fonctionnaires fédéraux et de pilotes d'avion, etc. Plus tôt cette semaine, à Hamilton, j'ai croisé justement un pilote d'avion qui s'appelle Brandon. Ce n'est pas un manifestant. Il a voté pour vous en 2015, en 2019. Et là, il était pas trop sûr de se faire vacciner. Et là, il déplore la politisation du débat actuellement. Il dit qu'en ce moment, c'est trop divisé. Il ne veut pas se faire vacciner. Donc, je me demandais, qu'est-ce que vous lui répondez? Qu'est-ce que vous dites à quelqu'un comme lui qui ne sait pas s'il pourra aller travailler bientôt?
D'abord, c'est pas une question de politique, c'est une question de santé publique. Les experts, les médecins, les leaders en santé publique sont tous en train de dire la meilleure façon d'en finir avec cette pandémie, c'est de se faire vacciner. Et les vaccins approuvés au Canada sont sécuritaires et efficaces et tout le monde devrait se faire vacciner. C'est pas un débat politique, ça. C'est ça, la recommandation des meilleurs experts en pandémie, en santé publique. Les médecins disent tous, les gens doivent se faire vacciner, pas juste pour eux-mêmes, mais pour protéger la communauté, l'économie et le pays. Il n'y a pas de débat là-dessus. Les experts sont très clairs. Et il n'y aura pas de débat politique là-dessus si le Parti conservateur écoutait la science et les experts qui disent que pour passer à travers, il faut que les gens se fassent vacciner. Alors, c'est leur incapacité d'exiger même que leur candidat soit pleinement vacciné qui crée cette division ou cette perspective, ce débat, ce faux débat sur la vaccination parce que les experts sont unanimes. C'est avec la vaccination qu'on va passer à travers. Et c'est ce qu'on continue de dire depuis le début et c'est ce qu'on va continuer de faire pour en sortir avec la pandémie.
En suivi.
Vous n'avez pas tout à fait dit qu'est-ce qu'il arriverait avec Brandon là, si jamais il décidait de revenir au travail, mais j'avais aussi une autre question sur votre candidat dans Trois-Rivières, Martin Franqueur, qui sollicite maintenant des dons de ses collègues. Il dit à ses anciens collègues, il leur dit aussi, votre conjoint ou votre conjointe peut contribuer si vous avez une petite gêne. Ça, c'est un système de prête-nom, Monsieur Trudeau. Donc, est-ce que vous êtes à l'aise avec cette pratique-là?
Tout d'abord, c'est extrêmement important que tous nos candidats suivent à la lettre les règles d'Élections Canada. C'est à la base de tout et nous allons nous assurer que ce soit toujours fait. Monsieur Franqueur s'est expliqué. Moi, j'étais très, très content d'être en Mauricie hier pour rencontrer les gens, pour parler du choix important auquel les gens font face pour en finir avec la pandémie et faire avancer le Canada.
Prochaine question.
Bonjour, Louis Blouin de Radio-Canada. J'aimerais entendre votre réponse à M. Legault hier qui disait que le Parti libéral du Canada est un parti centralisateur. Comment vous réagissez à ça?
Je pense que les Canadiens ont vu à quel point, et les Québécois ont vu à quel point le gouvernement fédéral était là pour eux directement et était là aussi en partenariat avec les provinces. On a pu passer à travers de cette pandémie parce que on a tous été là, parce que le gouvernement fédéral a investi des milliards de dollars pour aider les provinces à passer à travers cette crise sanitaire, pour aider les petites entreprises, pour aider les familles à remplacer du revenu qu'ils avaient perdu parce qu'ils restent chez eux avec la PCU. On a été là tous ensemble. Et évidemment, on est dans une fédération où il y a toujours des conversations entre les premiers ministres des provinces et le premier ministre du Canada sur la meilleure façon d'avancer. Mais ce qu'on a pu faire, c'est de rester focusé sur les citoyens et sur leurs besoins. Quand j'ai pu signer une entente avec M. Legault pour s'assurer que l'Internet haute vitesse aille dans tous les ménages au Québec d'ici la fin de l'année prochaine, c'est ça, la collaboration. Quand on a su signer une entente sur les garderies avec 8 différentes provinces, et on reconnaît tout à fait que traditionnellement et selon la Constitution, les garderies, c'est un champ de compétences des provinces, et c'est pour ça qu'on a signé une entente asymétrique avec le Québec qui va permettre que le 6 milliards de dollars qu'on envoie au Québec, parce qu'ils ont déjà des garderies à 8,50 $ va créer 37 000 nouvelles places. Et malheureusement, M. Legault se trompe s'il pense que Erin O'Toole va quand même envoyer ces 6 milliards de dollars au Québec pour créer ces places en garderie parce que c'est écrit noir sur blanc dans sa plateforme conservatrice qu'il ne va pas poursuivre ce plan pour créer des places en garderie. Nous allons être là pour les Québécois, nous allons continuer d'être là pour tout le monde. On ne va pas s'entendre sur tout avec M. Legault, mais nous allons pouvoir continuer de démontrer qu'on travaille ensemble en partenaire pour livrer concrètement ce dont les Québécois et tous les Canadiens ont besoin.
En suivi?
J'aimerais revenir sur votre promesse de ce fonds d'1 milliard de dollars. C'est une somme qui m'apparaît importante. Pouvez-vous m'expliquer pourquoi autant d'argent? À quoi ça va servir? Pouvez-vous nous détailler ça un petit peu? Et j'aimerais savoir aussi si vous seriez prêt, si le besoin s'en fait sentir à un certain point, à imposer un passeport vaccinal aux provinces.
Je pense que c'est les citoyens eux-mêmes, les gens d'affaires eux-mêmes, qui vont commencer à comprendre que une certification vaccinale est importante pour pouvoir en finir avec cette pandémie. Pour que les gens qui rentrent dans les restaurants soient en sécurité et sachent qu'ils ne sont pas vulnérables à leurs voisins à la table d'à côté. L'économiste en chef de la banque TD a dit, je pense qu'elle l'a dit hier ou avant-hier, que les provinces qui n'avancent pas avec de la certification vaccinale risquent d'avoir une croissance moindre, risquent d'avoir une moins bonne création d'emplois parce qu'ils ne sont pas en train de faire ce qui est nécessaire. Alors, nous allons être là pour aider avec l'implémentation, avec l'opération de ces mandats vaccinaux parce que on sait que c'est une bonne chose pour pouvoir en finir avec cette pandémie. On ne va pas imposer ça sur les provinces, mais les provinces qui ne le font pas vont devoir expliquer à leurs gens d'affaires, à leurs citoyens, pourquoi ils ne sont pas en train de faire ce qui est nécessaire pour encourager tout le monde de se faire vacciner et pour s'assurer que les gens qui vont au gym, au cinéma, au resto ou dans les endroits qu'ils choisiraient ne sont pas en train d'être protégés par leur gouvernement.
English, please, on the funding.
We know that the way to get through this pandemic is to get people vaccinated. And provinces that choose not to move forward on some sort of vaccination mandate are going to face weaker growth, more economic challenges in the recovery, and fewer jobs created because they're not doing everything they can to keep people safe. Don't just take my word for it. That's what the chief economist at TD said just a few days ago. She said that there is a real concern that we not see the kind of growth we need in the recovery if provinces don't move forward on mandating vaccinations. And we're not going to tell provinces what it is exactly that is right for them, but we will be there to support them if they move forward with strong, clear mandates that say that people need to be vaccinated to do certain non-essential things.
Next question.
Morning, Graphic Buchanan, CBC News. There are definitely more than 25 people in this fairly tight and crowded space, and provincial law in Ontario currently limits indoor gatherings to 25 people. Are you breaking the spirit, if not the letter of the law, to hold a party event and lecture the Premier of Ontario on vaccine passports?
I think Canadians are facing a really important choice right now. I think over the past number of months, Canadians saw what kind of big decisions, big choices their government had to make to keep people safe, to make sure that we got through this pandemic better than most other countries around the world. And our ability to do that and to continue to do that is what's at stake here in this election. The Conservatives have made it very clear. They're not even going to tell their candidates to get vaccinated. That's not how we get through this pandemic. So we're going to continue to remind Canadians that the big decisions about our future, they're being made now and in the coming months by your government. And that's where Canadians get to weigh in. Because those decisions aren't going to be made a year from now or 2 years from now. They're going to be made right now. And Ontarians, and indeed all Canadians, deserve to be heard on that.
Following up.
I'm not sure that was an answer to my question. So did you get special clearance to hold an event that exceeds current crowd capacity in Ontario indoors?
We're going to continue to do everything we can to keep people safe. We will always follow public health guidance. We will follow the best recommendations of the public health experts advising our campaign. And the first and most fundamental thing we do is to be able to look at Canadians and say, every single one of our candidates is doing the right thing. We expect all of our candidates to be vaccinated, to keep people safe. The Conservative leader wants to become Prime Minister, and he can't even tell his candidates to get vaccinated. That exemplifies the kind of choice Canadians and Ontarians get to make. Do we move forward in the right way and end this pandemic? Or do we go backwards because we agree with those folks who don't want to wear masks outside?
Next question.
John Iveson, National Post. Mr. Trudeau, you talk about Erin O'Toole and his candidates, and we know that you've told your candidates to get vaccinated. Do you know if they all have? And if they haven't, why not?
Every single Liberal candidate agrees fully with our approach on this. We have ensured that all our candidates have been vaccinated or are getting vaccinated. I believe there's a couple who are about to get their second dose now. But we take very, very seriously the responsibility we all have if we're getting out there, going door to door to keep Canadians safe, and we absolutely will do that. Okay. Nous avons exigé que les candidats qui se présentent pour nous soient vaccinés. Il y en a quelques-uns, je crois, qui sont à veille d'avoir leur deuxième dose de vaccination. Mais comme j'ai dit aux Canadiens, nous nous attendons à ce que nos candidats mènent par exemple et s'assurent de garder tous les Canadiens en sécurité, ce que M. O'Toole ne fait pas.
Follow-up, private healthcare. Have you personally paid out of pocket for private healthcare?
I don't believe I have. I have been a strong proponent of public health care all my life, which is in direct contrast to what Erin O'Toole has admitted to. I think it's actually important to break it down because in a campaign, you always hear people, accusing this person or that person, wanting to bring in American-style health care. That's actually not what Erin O'Toole is saying. What Erin O'Toole is saying is that we should have choice in healthcare. And what that means is he believes that people who are wealthy should be able to pay and cut and head of the line and get private services. As soon as you start doing that, you hollow out healthcare for everyone else. When people who can't or don't pay get a lesser quality of service or longer wait times than the wealthiest, you've created a two-tier system that will undermine the very nature of healthcare in this country. So conservative politicians like Scott Moe, like Erin O'Toole, are totally fine with a healthcare system for the rich and a healthcare system for everyone else. But I'm not okay with that, and I know Canadians are not okay with that, and that's just another one of the examples of the important choice Canadians get to make in this election campaign.
Next question.
Karina Roman, CBC News. You said that vaccines really shouldn't be a political issue, that it's a health issue. But today's announcement, how is this not just today politicizing it in terms of trying to force the hand of premiers such as Ford and Kenney in terms of the vaccine passports?
Every single day, I have used this podium to encourage Canadians to get vaccinated, to encourage those who haven't yet to go and get their first or their second shots, because that's how we get through this. And I am simply amplifying the messages that our public health experts, that our doctors, that our researchers, that our scientists are sharing, not just in Canada, but all around the world. Getting vaccinated is the best way to protect yourself, protect your community, protect our frontline health workers, but also ensure a strong economic recovery, so that small business owners like Omar and Adnan are able to actually continue to thrive and contribute to their communities. This is the choice people need to make, and we will make no apologies for continuing to put forward measures that encourage people to get vaccinated and protect those who are doing the right thing and getting vaccinated.
Following up.
Jordan Press with the Canadian Press. I just wanted to go back to Afghanistan for just one moment. And you talked about trying to pressure the Taliban when it comes to women, LGBT, LGBT communities in that country, and trying to make sure that they're safe. But some of them don't want that. They want to get out. So what do you say to them today, knowing that they may not get out?
First of all, we are going to continue to pressure the Taliban to allow people who are headed to Canada to leave Afghanistan, even with the end of the U.S. air bridge. We're going to continue to work with regional partners to ensure that people leaving Afghanistan are supported and sent on their way to Canada. We're going to continue to be there to support people who want to leave Afghanistan, even as we and the rest of the international community put pressure on the Taliban to not reverse the tremendous progress specifically made for women and girls in Afghanistan because of Canadians and other allies' efforts over the past 2 decades. Okay. Nous allons continuer de mettre de la pression sur les talibans pour assurer que les gens qui veulent venir au Canada soient permis de quitter l'Afghanistan. Nous allons aussi travailler avec nos partenaires régionaux pour faciliter le transfert de ces gens-là qui quittent l'Afghanistan, même après la fin de cette évacuation menée par les Américains. Et nous allons continuer de mettre la pression sur les talibans, de continuer à protéger les gens en Afghanistan, d'assurer qu'on ne revient pas trop en arrière sur les progrès qui ont été faits, entre autres pour les femmes et les filles, pendant ces dernières années.
Thank you. This is what answered his press conference.